Hack City with the two biggest hacks in college football, bringing you college football analysis, getting ready for week 5 of action for you this weekend. Joe DeLeone, Sean Anderson, if you're tuning in and joining us. I just completely lost my train of thought, Sean. Very distracted so far today. Sean, I'm glad that you're here. We've got a lot of really good games that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, it's a huge week 5. When I was putting together some stuff for the week, I'm like, oh, okay, so we can pick this game. This game has a good ranked matchup, and then it's all high ranked matchups. You got good ACC matchups, good SEC matchups. Was it Big 10, Big 12? It's a big week for college football, and this is it's not the witching hour yet, but we're getting close to it where it kind of is for college football, where a lot of teams' seasons in week 5 will be determined by now or within the next 2 weeks. So if you want to make the playoff, if you want to get a high ranking bowl game, we play on New Year's Day. This is kind of where you need to earn it.
Right, you hit the nail on the head. We're getting into conference play where we've got all these ranked matchups. We're starting to get some of these key games that are going to be played out. And, the three that we're going to be talking about here is the matchup between Alabama and Arkansas. We're going to talk about Ole Miss versus Kentucky and then Clemson, NC State. I know that there are some other ranked matchups this weekend, but just for the sake of trying to focus on the big games here, the ones that are the most important, these are the ones that we're going to be discussing. Anyone who's listening into the replay, or maybe you're hopping in live, Sean, we're getting really close to 10,000. We're like 780 away from getting to 10,000, which is a pretty big deal. And I think we're going to definitely get to that by the end of the month. But Sean, let's talk about this first game. First one for me that I'm really juiced up to watch, because I keep hearing all these random side opinions on the perception of this game. We're talking about Alabama versus Arkansas. I heard somebody yesterday say that Arkansas is going to beat Alabama. Arkansas is good enough to beat Alabama. And I think that before them losing to Texas A&M, we could have made that argument. But Alabama right now, after that Texas game, which was a really difficult offensive game for them, I've got a lot more faith in Bryce Young in that offense. And I think that they're just starting to hit rhythm with a bunch of new guys that are out there. And it's not something that is going to happen overnight. This is a process. It is a process to get back to high level of play when you lose John Mechie and you also lose Jamison Williams. And here we are now in week 5 with Alabama's turn to prove that, hey, we're still the top dogs.
Arkansas is not going to win this game. Who are you talking to about that? Who said that Arkansas was going to win?
I've heard people on podcasts talk about it. I've also really thank you to Brian for the donation. Really appreciate that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, very, very, very nice. Didn't have to do that, and really means a lot. Somebody also in the office made note of that. I just realized he said "Go Noles." We'll talk about Florida State actually at the very end of this, but somebody in the office was the one who mentioned the
name the name.
It was Joe. It was Joe.
It was Joe?
Yes, it was Joe.
Joe's wrong.
Well, elaborate. Care to elaborate?
Arkansas is giving up 302 yards through the air a game. You can't do that. Alabama's throwing for 282 a game. You can't do that. Bryce Young is going to torch this defense. He just is. That's how it's going to work.
But with who is my counter argument?
KJ Jefferson is good. He's good quarterback. Made a really weird play last week, diving from the goal line, making me lose my cover. So I'm not very high on Arkansas right now. But look, it's Alabama right now versus Arkansas. If Arkansas beat Texas A&M, they might have had a little more momentum to go in and say, oh, we just beat Texas A&M. Now we can go and really hang with Alabama. I don't think they're hanging with Alabama. I think it's going to be a little closer, like maybe they're not going to play them as well as Texas did either. So what is Joe thinking? They're not going to beat Alabama.
Well, yeah, there was like an internal discussion of this when we were in one of the offices, but I work at a sports media company, so it's not like it's a bunch of accounting idiots talking about it. So it's a relatively reputable bunch that's talking about it, somewhat reputable. Not fully reputable. I consider us to know more, but besides the point, you make a lot of really good points. Right now,
Arkansas,
very, very humble of you. Arkansas's defense right now is hurting, losing Andrew Catalon, and I don't know the timetable for him to return to the lineup, but he's a fantastic safety, very, very talented safety. And you're seeing those issues without him there. Max Johnson's okay. Like, he's very mid. He's better than Haynes King, but for him to make some of those plays and some of those throws and Anaya Smith to make those plays for Texas A&M in that game, like, That's concerning, as you're talking about. Like, why would we be confident in Arkansas secondary to perform well enough to stop Alabama, albeit with a depleted receiving core and less options?
Arkansas they're not fast enough starters. They're just not. Missouri State almost took them down. Okay, they woke up and said, "Hey, it's Missouri State. FCS carryover. I'm not hating, but it is what it is." Look, it's Missouri State. We need to take over. They had a punt return touchdown. They started to put the locks on the game. They can't have that happen. They need to score on their first drive if they want to hang with Alabama. They need to stop Alabama on their first drive, or else that steamroller is just going to keep on moving down the field. That's what Saban has this team moving like. That's how this entire coaching staff and all their what do they call them? Analytic assistants. What is a dummy from the Texans?
Analysts,
team analysts that take these weird jobs with Alabama that just help out. Is just another bright mind in that facility. So I like Pittman. I like what they're building there. It's just not fully built yet to beat Alabama.
Yeah, and the weird thing that just becomes really hard to figure out where the receiving production comes from, because like you got Roy Dell Williams, you've got Jamarian Miller, Jace McClellan. Like I don't have a lot of confidence in Alabama's receivers. That's what comes down to it for me, and why I'm not that I'm worried about Alabama. I think Alabama has every capability to dominate in this game. But if you play a relatively effective job in coverage, it makes it easier to slow down Alabama's offense. The one thing that then counters that is Jahmyr Gibbs looks fantastic right now.
Yes.
He's playing at the Heisman level, almost up to that Heisman level that I suggested he could play at playing at Alabama. And I think if you get a good game out of Jahmyr Gibbs, that's what happened with Devon Achane last week for Texas A&M. He popped off. He had a bunch of long runs. He had really good production. And they won that football game behind him, not Max Johnson. So if Jahmyr does the same shit, comes out, plays a really good football game, it's lights out. It's night over for Arkansas.
Okay, so here's the question I have to pose to you then. Does Alabama win by 17.5 points? Do they win by 18?
Is that what the line is right now?
That's what the line is right now.
Really? That's the line
18.
right now?
It was 20 versus Texas.
I know it was 20 against Texas, and the thing that makes it really complicated for that is that, like, here's my counter question to you. Is this the same Alabama team?
I posed a question. Wait. You cannot counter question a question.
Yes, I can. We're having a discussion. Is this the same Alabama team that we watched?
I still need your answer, by the way. I'm
going to give my answer.
Okay.
I'm going to give my answer. Is this still the same Alabama team that we watched play against Texas?
Yes. It's still Bryce Young that's going to make some ridiculous plays to edge out a win in the game.
But, okay, so then by that logic, Alabama's not going to cover.
But Texas has not been the same Texas team since that game.
Right,
that was a career game for Texas. Not a career game. That was the best game Texas will play all year.
I don't disagree. I completely agree with that statement. So for that reasoning, I think that this game could be closer. Not saying that it's going to
be the best game that Arkansas plays this year.
I think every time anyone plays Alabama, when you're a ranked SEC team, your best game is always going to come against Alabama or Georgia. It's always going to come when you need to step up. They're not going to just take it. They're not going to just
think they played their best game in week 1 versus Cincinnati. That's what I think.
They played like shit, though, against Cincinnati.
That's the best game that they played.
Really?
I do not think... So now, answer my question. Does Alabama cover 17.5?
It depends on a lot of things, but I'm going to sit here and say no. I'm going to say that I don't think Alabama covers 17.5. That's a lot of points to cover against Arkansas. And I understand that Alabama's defense is really good and they're capable of causing problems. And right now their secondary is playing at a very under talked about level, albeit against some pretty weak teams. It is going to take a lot to win by 17 points. Like you would need a disastrous day from KJ Jefferson, and Rocket Sanders, I think, is a little banged up. And if you don't have him, you would need a disastrous offensive day for that to happen.
What if Will Anderson has a big day? 2-sack day, couple pass breakups?
Then they're covering. If the defense comes to play, but it would require...
That's one player on their defense that already got you to flip-flop your decision.
Because he's the best player in the country.
Okay. If you say so.
What do you think? Do you think that Alabama covers?
Don't worry about what I think. Why are you watching my bets?
That's the point of this conversation is just to have a back and forth.
I don't know if I can give out my picks yet.
Can you see the comment that Colin threw up
I
there?
can see it. I'm watching. I agree. But I guess my price tag was too high for them.
Apparently. Sean, second game, and I want to kind of hit some quick hits at the end of this, by the way. Ole Miss versus Kentucky, I think, is where the real battle is going to happen this weekend. This is between two teams that are undefeated, but have not necessarily proved themselves. And I would argue Kentucky has proved themselves slightly more with their win against Florida, which has been recognized as a rankable, good SEC program. Not great, but good SEC program. So now here these two teams face off. Ole Miss has looked a little shaky, especially this last game against Tulsa that they had that was a little close for comfort, that I think Ole Miss fans would not like to see those types of games against weaker opponents. On the flip side of things, Kentucky having some offensive woes. Their offensive line is playing like crap after losing a lot of guys to the NFL. So here we are with this game. What do you think is, who do you think comes out firing? Is this going to be Kentucky all the way, or do you think Ole Miss is just like a sleeping giant ready to fire?
I'm a Kiffin guy. I am. I'm a big Kiffin guy. I don't know why. I know he screwed over the Vols. I know he screwed over other teams. I know he was a goofball in the NFL. I understand that. I still am a Lane Kiffin guy through and through. I think he's a character. I like Lane Kiffin. I have a weird faith in Lane Kiffin just because he doesn't give a fuck about anybody else except for the players on his team. So I like Ole Miss. But I also kind of like the emergence of Kentucky as a football school. I do. I like when they had Benny Snell toting the rock. That was fun. I like that. Levis is good. I think we're giving a little too much credit for Kentucky being Florida, just a little too much, because after Anthony Richardson had a really good week 1, weeks 2 through 4 were a little suspect.
So inconsistent.
So we're looking at this and saying, okay, you beat Florida. They got a good defense. They beat Utah. Utah screwed me in that game. They did. But Florida isn't a world beater. So the win over Florida isn't huge for me. It just isn't. But people like you and Ryan are telling me Will Levis is a good quarterback, so maybe I'll believe it. I'm not super read up on the Kentucky side of things, but I think Stoops is a good coach. Stoops is coaching there, correct?
Yes, Stoops.
Come on now. Yeah, I like Stoops as a coach. Yep. But I'm a Kiffin guy. I'm riding with Ole Miss here.
Okay. The thing that gets really complicated for me with this game is I want to lean Kentucky because of I give a little more credit for the game that they played against Florida than I think you do, which is understandable. Florida played like crap that game. They were non-existent. However, I am reluctant to totally buy in for a lot of the reasons that you kind of talked about there. And the one that scares me the most is the fact that they have one of the worst statistical offensive lines. Like they have, bottom tier, like bottom 10 in terms of yards per carry, rush yards per game. And then they're also one of the worst teams in terms of sacks allowed, which is seriously problematic. Florida's defense doesn't have a pass rush. It has a non-existent pass rush. They weren't really able to do a whole lot in that game. And I know that Ole Miss isn't necessarily like a world beater pass rush defense and all the things that they have there, but I think that they could hit home and they could make some plays on Will Levis. And as we've seen in Will Levis's career, he is a quarterback when flustered, tends to press and make mistakes like Anthony Richardson does. So I'm leaning Ole Miss in this one, Sean. I'm in the same boat as you. As much as I'd like for Kentucky to win this football game, and as Ole Miss hasn't really played anyone tough, Kiffin's going to rally his guys and he's going to bring them to play. And the strategy here needs to be just go after Will Levis. They're getting Chris Rodriguez back, who's a talented running back. But if you force Will Levis to overdo things and he turns the ball over, that's how you win this football game. And it shouldn't take much because that offensive line is playing like shit.
Here's the thing. Ole Miss is favored by 6.5 here. I know this is not a betting show, but the betting sometimes indicates a little more than some of the box score. Ole Miss hasn't played anybody. Neither is Kentucky. They played Florida. They beat Florida. Florida was not as good. And Ole Miss played Georgia Tech, and they had a close one versus Tulsa. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This seems like a game that Kentucky could cover. They won't win, but they could lose by 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're not going to win this game. But I think they would cover in this game. I don't know why. Gut's telling me Kentucky covers. Ole Miss could put up 40 points. Kentucky could put up 35. That's how I'm seeing this game. That's how I'm reading it from a betting standpoint.
I think that projection's fair. I think that the covering by Kentucky is totally going to happen. I think this game's going to be a lot more low scoring, which feels really weird to say for a battle between Kentucky and Ole Miss, because we're used to both teams having good offenses and both have good quarterbacks, and Jackson Dart versus Will Levis. Like, that's a good matchup. That's a good quarterback matchup for a shootout type game. But I think some of the limitations for these teams offensively are going to show up. But yeah, totally Kentucky covering. But at the same time, Ole Miss money line them winning this football game is, I think, super likely outcome at the end of the day.
I'm glad we agree on that.
Okay, we agree on something for once. Sean, Clemson versus NC State. It's getting attention, and we're recognizing it simply for the national exposure to this game. But this game is a snoozer to me. This is an absolute
Major
snoozer.
Major snoozer. And Wake fumbled it, because now we wouldn't even be talking about this game. I don't know why I was rooting for Wake Forest. I know that Clemson has a lot of really good, heartwarming storylines this year. I like it. The Clemson team, I have no beef with, but it's always good to see other teams in the ACC step up. Wake Forest fumbled it. They should have Clemson kept on running the same play. They couldn't stop it. And NC
the same shit the whole game. The same shit the whole game.
It was an entertaining game, and that's really what I'm looking for in college football. Ungulale has been okay, right?
And overhyped.
Okay.
Everyone is talking about how he had this Heisman performance. He didn't play that well.
Who said he had a Heisman? Are they saying
everyone is speaking that into existence, that that was
he bought himself 2 weeks. That's right. What he did.
But so everyone's saying all the DJU haters, where are you? Look at this game that he had. It's a box score game. It's a box score game that he had 5 touchdowns in. He played in overtime. Yeah, that game is not indicative of his performance. I watched a lot of missed throws, a lot of forced passes. He is still the same guy. He has not improved. He has not taken a step forward. I don't understand where this sudden hype for him and this sudden hype for Clemson. Their secondary got cooked, absolutely cooked. And while I like Sam Hartman, mid-tier quarterback, he's a good college quarterback. A.T. Perry didn't have one of his best games. Other guys stepped up that are mid-tier receivers. That secondary sucks. And I think this Clemson team is going to be exposed for the frauds that they really are this weekend.
Here's the thing. Offensively, Clemson and NC State, very, very similar per game. NC State, 411 yards a game. Clemson, 458. Defense, though, we're looking at an NC State team that's given up 261 and Clemson that's giving up 346. I can't buy in, but I also can't buy into fraudulent NC State that can't cover against ECU.
Right.
Yeah, I'm harboring resentment for that. I am.
Because you bet on them?
It was my first lock of the week selection on the Inquirer, and I bombed it. So I will harbor resentment for that.
So first time on a national, national exposure, that does suck. But I totally agree with you that NC State, they played.
I just don't know who they have. I don't know who's the guy that's going to step up for them.
Devin Leary
that's going to do it.
Devin Leary, their starting quarterback, is good, but are we really? See, the one thing that they have to ride on is their win over Texas Tech. That's what they're able to point to and say, hey, look, Texas Tech is a good Big 12 program. We need to give them more credit. But they've played nobodies across the board. It's been a bunch of no-name teams that they've played. UConn and East Carolina, who they barely beat.
Clemson's almost in that same boat.
Southern.
Clemson is almost in that same boat. Georgia Tech, I'm not even counting as the ACC school, really. I'm just not.
That's why I think that this is the biggest fraud game of the week. This is
huge fraud game.
This is the hack game of the week, because every hack out there is doing the, wow, this game's got great implications on it. It's for the ACC, title. I have a feeling that possibly neither of these teams are competing for the ACC at the end of the season. I have said this through and through, that I think we'll eventually get one of these teams just has whoever wins this game is going to have a stupid loss, and then both these teams are going to have one loss, and then it's going to completely destroy both their resumes. Someone's going to lose to Boston College. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Hey, come on now.
Oh, I forgot you're wearing the Boston College hat.
I am.
Speaking of ACC teams, Sean, I want to highlight Wake Forest versus Florida State for a second.
How can we not? This is the ACC championship right here.
honestly. I have more faith in Wake Forest after the way that they played against Clemson. They just, barely lost the game. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of all in on Florida State. Like
Why am I in on Norvell? Why am I in on it?
He's rallying the
I could
boys.
care less about Mike Norvell, but why I'm kind of in.
He's rallying that Seminole team, and I look at it like the fact that they've played a lot of difficult games and they've dealt with the injuries where Jared Verse went down, and I'm blanking on the name of their starting quarterback, and this is going to piss me off that I'm forgetting it, but they had an injury at their starting quarterback. To have those injuries and to deal with those problems,
Jordan
Travis, that's who it is. For them to be 4-0 after that difficulties that they've dealt with, and when you get those guys back, I think that they have the best shot actually out of anyone in the ACC, and it's not getting properly covered at all.
Gritty LSU win, and the only reason that game is getting glossed over was because it was Brian Kelly's first real test in the SEC, and he lost. Whereas in reality, Florida State won. Gritty win over Louisville also stomped the hell out of Boston College. So looking at it, go ahead. This team I can get on board with. I just can. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm tired of Clemson. Maybe I'm just tired of seeing Clemson.
I am tired of seeing Clemson, and I'm also tired of watching crappy Clemson get credit for not doing anything. Like that's what they're getting hyped up so much this week, and that's what's pissing me off is that like we're giving them credit for doing nothing.
And if NC State's gonna do it, go and do it. Okay, stop messing around. That's if this week will tell me if NC State can do it or not, and I don't think they can.
So I this is going to go in line with another team I'm going to bring up in a second, but out of all the ACC teams, the only team that has shown me complete football on both sides of the ball, and this is with injuries that I just mentioned, is Florida State. They have shown complete games on both sides of the football, despite having those limitations, is a reason to be high on them. Clemson has blatant holes. Wake Forest, blatant holes. NC State, blatant holes. And they also are playing crappy games and games where they're supposed to dominate. So I have faith in Florida State. I think that is a team down the line that is starting to build momentum that very well is going to win the conference.
I kind of agree. I don't know why I'm rooting for it. I am. It is. I don't care. What do I care? What do I care about ACC football?
I'm trying to pull up who they're playing, but the other team that has not been properly recognized. Also, I really appreciate Colin trying to facilitate conversation in the chat. I always love it when he does that. Another team that has not been properly recognized is Kansas, and they're playing Iowa State this week, who's 3-1. That's a really important game for Kansas. And I said this on the recap show that I did, that Kansas is one of the few Big 12 teams that has shown me complete football across the board. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but they are a top 5 team offensively this season in terms of production. Jaden
Daniels has been good.
Is it Jalen? It's Jalen Daniels. Jaden Daniels.
I messed it up. You're
good.
Yeah.
Jalen Daniels is playing at a Heisman level. Like that's not ridiculous to say. The guy is
no, the guy.
He statistically is one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now.
I gotcha.
It's not ridiculous to say at all, and
it is ridiculous though.
But
it's not, but it is. You have to understand.
Duke, who's a good
smiling.
Duke
That's
team.
how I know you know it's ridiculous.
But I'm smiling because it makes me happy that Kansas is
Duke
good.
Is
Kansas is such a meme,
dude. I'm glad it's Kansas being 4-0 is the storyline that we needed. Because other than that, what do we have? Penn State looks good,
but do they? Like,
what are you, a Penn State hater?
No, I'm not a Penn State. I've actually grown an affinity for Penn State because I've been working with McGloin and Hannafin. Like it's
sure.
Like I've been following the team way more than it probably should be.
Look, here's the deal. Kansas beating West Virginia, Houston is more important than them beating Duke. It is. Now, whatever Houston's going to do is what Houston's going to do. I don't really care about Houston, but it is a fantastic storyline that has taken me through September. If they keep the ball rolling, which they can against Iowa State, unimpressive. 5-0 Kansas being ranked at number 23 next week would be spectacular. It would be.
And I think they get it done. I think they honestly get
They
it
just
done.
don't have a Heisman winner quarterback
Yes,
or
they
Heisman
do.
nominee.
He's not going to win. He's not going to win it. But he gives me like those Colin Klein vibes where he was just at the ceremony. He was there and he had a bunch of really good stats. Like that's his ceiling. He's not going to win it unless they run the table and they win the national championship game. Which,
oh my God,
Sean, I hope you realize this. How much I'm rooting for that for Kansas.
Oh.
Could you imagine if not? They're not going to win a national championship game. But if
I would need to go to Macy's and get new underwear. Yeah, I just would have blown the fronts out of every single one of them.
All I need is for that is disgusting. The
Thanks.
fronts. I'm out here worried about something I put a clip out on, and what you said is far more inappropriate. It's far more disgusting and inappropriate. My point, though, is that if they like are on the outside looking in at the college football playoff, are you kidding me? How fucking fantastic that would be, dude, to see at the end of the season.
What if they were in a New Year's bowl game?
Oh, I'm praying for that. I am absolutely rooting for that.
How fantastic would that be?
That would, because it would just ruin everything for all the elitists out there, all the SEC elitists and all that
traditionalists,
crap.
all that. Yeah. That'd be fantastic. Colin, please don't.
Please clip that. Colin, please clip that.
Colin, I have good karma with you. I'm trying to cash in on this. It's a vile statement by a vile human.
I want to acknowledge something that Colin brought up. One of the games that Colin very clearly wants to be talked about. Texas Tech versus Kansas State. Kansas State being ranked feels weird. Like, I don't want to credit them for losing to Tulane, even though Tulane's like a decent football program.
Yeah.
Texas Tech not being ranked feels weird. I actually think that Texas Tech is going to win this game. I said this on the last show. Adrian Martinez sucks. He had the game of his life. That is. You
can't be happy for him having the game of his life. You're sitting here talking about Jalen Daniels having the season of his life, and you're all losing his mind for him. You can't get happy for the boy Chris Kleeman either.
I'm out. I'm out on Adrian Martinez. I am out on.
Why? Why are you out on Adrian
He's
Martinez?
never been good, and he ran around because Oklahoma's defense is soft, and they weren't they weren't coming out to play at all. They weren't tackling.
What is your beef with Adrian Martinez? What did you say he was going to be really good as a prospect, and then he didn't pay? What happened?
No, I've always acknowledged that he's a bad quarterback, but my point is that like it's embarrassing that Oklahoma lost to. They didn't lose to Kansas State. They lost to Adrian Martinez.
They did.
And Adrian Martinez has been one of the most memeable quarterbacks in college football because he's just not he's a tight end playing quarterback.
Stop it. This is a quality team with a quality quarterback. They spanked Missouri like they were supposed to. A loss to Tulane that they overlooked Tulane. They overlooked them. And then you know what they did? They bounced back against number 6 Oklahoma, pardon me. That happens with a good quarterback. It can only happen with a good quarterback rallying the troops.
Stop. Please go rewatch the highlights of that game and tell me that he was a good quarterback in that game. He was
good
running
quarterback
on every down. It's easy for him to put up
good
a stat line in a game like he did, but he's fast and he's able to just run in circles and pick up yards. It's like when your defense doesn't come ready to play, that's not hard to do. He had the game of his life, and as high as I am on Deuce Vaughn and how much I love him as a player, who's their starting running back, I think Texas Tech has shown me more balls. I think that Texas Tech has shown me more balls to show up and beat Texas the way that they did and to come back and rally when they were down at halftime. And I'm all in on their head coach who had that really Sonny Dykes, who had that really, motivating, or actually, I don't know if that's Sonny Dykes. He had that really motivating. It's not Sonny Dykes. Motivating thing that he said at the very, during halftime and at the end of the game, all that stuff. I'm in on Texas Tech. I don't have any faith in Kansas State. It was one good game. It was their one good game of the year.
Basketball coach. Jesus.
Sonny Dykes isn't a basketball coach.
No, Mark Adams is their basketball coach.
Oh. Did you say Mark Adams?
Joey McGuire? Is that him?
That doesn't sound right.
I should have just Texas Tech head football coach.
Yeah, it's Joey McGuire. Sonny Dykes is the TCU coach. Wow, we know college football.
SMU for TCU. Look, Joe, you know what? I'm a Texas Tech guy. I liked how Texas Tech rallied against Chris Beard when he left Texas Tech for Texas in basketball. I like that. I liked everything they were doing in Lubbock. The only thing that is got me a little miffed at Texas Tech was the fan pushing the Texas player.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm down on Texas Tech right now. I wish I wasn't, but I am. I wish I wasn't, because I want to be in on Texas Tech. Cool teams, cool jerseys, cool everything. Not major Texas school. It's a major Texas school, but you think Texas A&M, you think Texas. All right. I just can't get over that. I don't know why. It's just something within me. I want better. I want their fans to be better. I know those just some drunk jackass. It doesn't matter to me. All right. I that's going to stay with me for a little bit.
No, and it's justifiable. I think that celebration by them it's ridiculous. Like the horns down thing is funny. The guy who turned around and gave the horns down to the mascot and stuff.
Yeah,
like that was funny.
Great.
But like
that was great.
Plowing over a player who, and I said this on the FCS show, if the player retaliates, he's in a squad car. Like there's a squad car that shows up because of the double standard that is going to happen in those situations. And it's ridiculous.
So,
the fine was justified.
I'm team Martinez. I'm team Kleinman. I'm all in.
We're down on Adrian Martinez. This is not an Adrian Martinez show.
This is not we.
Yeah. I think it's a good note to wrap us up on.
Sure.
Sean. At Joe DeLeone, at Sanderson Radio, Hack City, almost 10K subs. Please, if you're watching the replay, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And we'll be back with a recap show this weekend.